Okay, hi. If someone's in Discord and can hear me, can you please say something? Because I've just been having my microphone and everything explode on me. So that would be cool. Oh right, and there's a 30-second delay. So nice, awesome. Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. Hi everyone. Welcome to our attempt at trying to be somewhat normal right now, given all the craziness that's going on. Um, Myself and everybody else in the club obviously hopes everyone's doing well and is coping with all this craziness. So um, I'm just gonna do news. I don't really know what else we can do, but whatever, we'll go in the audio chat after. But we might as well. I mean, cybersecurity news doesn't stop just because everybody's really sick, and actually some things got worse. So yeah, first big one is that a vendor who was using, or a vendor who Rogers was using, left a database exposed and open on the internet. Which was unfortunate because there was, some sensitive data there. They claim no payment card information or login credentials were involved, but I mean, exposed customer names, addresses, account numbers, email, and telephone is pretty much everything you'd want to do some sick social engineering on all these people. So that's not great. Moving along. There was an interesting article from ThreatPost actually on the increased security challenges now that half the world is working from home. So a couple of things they mentioned. One, just that IT organizations and IT groups are concerned just that they really have no control over the end user's environment now. If someone's VPN'd in, they have some measure of control over the endpoint or the person's actual computer that they're connecting from, but not the actual network that they're operating in, which is no good. There's also, as the article says here, been sort of an uptick in certain types of social engineering and phishing attacks related to, the virus itself, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then they just kind of cover a few good practices for remote working and stuff like that, which is hey, use a VPN and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that'll be interesting to see, what happens there. Yeah. Other stuff. This one was kind of cool. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. So I guess because a lot of people have been really into either looking for bug bounties or whatever the cause might be, folks are finding more vulnerabilities right now. And it doesn't mean that software is more vulnerable. This study just claims that, they think people are looking for stuff more. Maybe part of that, too, could be, I think it was last year, GitHub introduced that feature that would automatically scan repos and flag vulnerabilities that needed fixing. I mean, some people obviously aren't, going with the automated merging of those requests that GitHub sort of finds in people's repos. But I mean, maybe services and features like that are allowing people just to discover more vulnerabilities as well. There's some neat stats halfway through the article. Here they're comparing percentages found by language previous to 2019 and in 2019. Obviously, C has a massive number of vulnerabilities compared to most of the other languages because there's certain categories of vulnerabilities that we really only see in C. C and C. Stuff a lot of memory corruption vulnerabilities and the actual errors of reading past the end of an array because every reasonable language just won't let you do that. The other big culprit is PHP because there's a lot of bad PHP web apps out there because it'll let you do pretty much anything. But there was also a bit of an uptick for most of the other languages other than Python, the greatest language in the world, and Ruby, which seemed to have fallen off by a little bit. So that's cool. This was cool. They also broke down what the most common weaknesses were across those vulns that were found. So basically the most common types or classes of vulnerabilities. So cross-site scripting, improper input validation, which is secure code 101. Buffer errors. This is your buffer overruns and stuff like that in C. Out of bound read, which again would be trying to read data past the end of an array, and information exposure, which is pretty generic, but anytime you're leaking any kind of data. If they took out C, any of the vulns from the C language in those, what they were left with was cross-site scripting, information exposure, and bad validation, which is it's interesting because it says that basically C is the one that's responsible for buffer errors and out of bounds and stuff, because other languages will check that for you, which is nice. So by having like strong and intelligent languages and compilers, we can actually have it reduce vulnerabilities for us, which is really cool. Yeah. So that's what I want to point out with that one. So everybody freaked out because right after like Patch Tuesday, there were some rumors that kind of got leaked from a few of the InfoSec like research groups and vendors about this alleged SMB version 3 vuln that could allow for remote code execution, that could allow something to be turned into a really prolific worm to spread around. And so that was on March the 11th, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, there's no patch in sight. And then on March 12th, a patch got released. So Microsoft pushed out what they call an out-of-band patch, meaning they pushed out this patch ahead of their normal patching cycle, because while there weren't any really like proofs that this vulnerability was being used in the wild, it was really dangerous. So they pushed out an early patch for it. So the next time you see an InfoSec article saying there's no patch in sight, they probably just mean literally, like they can't see one right this second, because there will be one probably the next day. Like, it's not that hard. So that was cool that got fixed. People should obviously update SMBv3 because remote code execution vulnerabilities are the worst. Right? I can run code on your server across the internet without authentication. That's about as bad as it gets. So yeah. For at least the next 5 years, we are going to be stuck with Intel CPUs that essentially have a hardware-style vulnerability that you cannot fix. No firmware flashing, firmware update can fix this issue. It's a problem with what they call the Converged Security and Management Engine, which is essentially Intel's version of like what we, with iOS, we would call like the Secure Enclave or the Trusted Platform Module, or a TPM. It's this like special area on the chip that allows for like a little bit of secure data storage, or where we could perform like some crypto operations, or an area that will also kind of verify the signatures on UEFI stuff at boot time. It's basically meant to be like a lockdown, really secure area of the CPU, but apparently there's a bit of a problem with it, and its operations can be interfered with, or its data can be read. So yeah, and unfortunately, since there is no way of fixing it, you just kind of have to wait for the next gen of CPUs. There are obviously like patches for operating systems and firmware that can help to like mitigate how bad this could be, but they're just mitigations, or they can make the compromise more difficult to pull off. So yeah, that's what that is. Hardware is hard, right? The best part is like none of you are actually like capable of telling me not to make stupid puns right now. So that's amazing. I hope you're really enjoying them. Yeah. Other stuff. There was an Android security app, I guess, called CleanMaster. I never heard of this thing, but apparently it had a ton of downloads. Like they say, more than 1 billion installs before Google managed to boot this thing off the Google Play Store. But basically, it was recording all kinds of web traffic and web behavior and stuff like that from users. So yeah, that is not great that a lot of people had that, and it was recording stuff. Yeah, I don't know. So they got rid of it. I mean, there is a note near the top of the article explaining which country this app came from, and if you go and read the article, it's probably not going to be a surprise to anybody. Next one. This is actually, so like I like when we actually get good like news stories and stuff that's positive and a little bit hopeful. So WireGuard has kind of been making the news in the InfoSec industry for a little bit now. It was a project to make like an actual really simple, trusted, open VPN software, piece of VPN software. The original version of this thing was only, I think, something like 4,000 lines, and it was meant to be open and easy to audit so that people would know that it's a legit, secure piece of VPN software. And I guess it's gotten good enough views and opinions that they are essentially bundling it into the Linux kernel, which will really help performance, because right now the software needs to do all of its encryption or a lot of its operations in like user space. So it'll try to do some encryption. It'll pass that down to the kernel, and then let the kernel do the encryption, and then pass that back up to the software. And when you're trying to do VPN and like low latency network stuff, that can potentially be a lot of overhead. So if you bundle that capability into the kernel, it's going to increase the speed and performance of this tool, which is great. So anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be really neat. I don't know, you could go read the source code for this thing if you want to know how it works. It got some kudos from this dude who's a crypto researcher who you may see fighting online on Twitter with that other dude, or Matt something. I forget his name right now. But anyways, they have crypto fights online all the time. So if he says it's good, that probably means it's pretty good. Other stuff. Let's Encrypt found a bug in essentially their like kind of root authority code, which is not great because it could allow for probably like cloning certificates and stuff. So basically everybody kind of had to force renew their stuff, which is not a big deal. It's kind of like just running their bot and getting it to redo like your cert stuff. Yeah, that's all. So, I mean, obviously it's a bit of a problem because everybody's been migrating over to Let's Encrypt because it's free. And hey, there's going to be bugs. It's software, there's bugs. And luckily the like turnaround or the effort on behalf of the users to like do this reset wasn't big. The problem is if nobody does the reset or if users don't do the reset, they can be like flagged as having, invalid certificates and stuff like you'll get Google Chrome giving you that like you're going to a bad website error message, which might prevent a lot of traffic for people. So it is important that they do the update, but hey, it's still good and it's free. Now, the next 3 articles are actually all about the same thing, and this is something that I hope everybody that is listening can try to communicate to their friends, their family, their coworkers, or whatever. Whenever there's like a big crisis or a huge news event, the first thing cybercrime does is hop all over it and build phishing campaigns and malware around that, because obviously this stuff is insane clickbait. So yeah, around all the COVID-19 corona stuff, there's been a few campaigns that have been identified. This one's just a general statement, I think, from the UK's like ComSec agency, which is GCHQ, warning people about this, but there's a couple more specific articles. Like this one was an app that apparently was supposed to track like victims across the world, for mapping and stuff like that, and it turned out that it was like it wanted ransom payments from people, because I guess like the Play Store can't keep up with all the apps that people are throwing up, so that one got a few people. So not great. So we got to warn people that we know to watch out for this kind of stuff, because it's really important and super prevalent right now. The other one, there's like kind of spear phishing attacks or just general, like phishing campaigns and stuff like that. This one was dropping some kind of a remote access tool as part of a campaign, I guess through these like fake kind of communications from some health organization or a ministry organization, and it would just like everything else be bundled into some document, and people would get this sort of remote access tool installed, which is not great. Yeah, anyways, that's about it. I'm looking forward to not seeing, but I guess communicating with a lot of you on Monday when we start classes again. This is going to be weird. This thing was also a bit of a like quick test setup for me, which has turned out to be kind of useful since I like broke OBS. I broke my microphone and I had to throw it all together at the last minute, so that's good. Hopefully that means I worked out some of the bugs for Monday. Anyways, I'm gonna hop on over to the like voice chat for a few minutes in Discord if anybody wants to talk about the articles or just anything else that they saw, and we'll try to get back to something that looks like a regular club meeting soon. Anyways, thanks for listening if you were listening, and if you weren't, you didn't hear that anyway, so whatever, so that's cool. Bye.